Everybody, it's your boy Hook on Picks coming to you live with fantasy football. Uh, we're gonna see. I'm gonna give you a little recap of all the players today and see what we're looking at. And I'm gonna go with the running backs this year and how I'm gonna judge them in my previous years of playing fantasy football. And what I look for is when I pick an actual running back and how I pick a running back, depending on what my draft status is. So, with that being said, let's look at the list and we'll go down by each one. So we'll do it. So, here we go.
Doomsday is just a lot of
All
mouse
right.
speed right now.
And
I think he's got the best
we're gonna go
long-term
down-
outlook at quarterback,
Well,
but
let me
maybe
speak
the
about how I
best,
pick
or maybe
mine
the worst
anyway.
short-term.
In number one, yeah, easy is Marvin
So,
Harrison.
what I
For
look
me,
for in a
because
running
I
back
think
is
the landing
basically a
spots
dual
for
threat.
Neighbors and Odunze
Christian
both come
McCaffrey
with
type guy,
big
somebody that's gonna
questions.
get
Quarterback
touchdowns,
questions for
and
Neighbors,
that he's a
surrounding
threat on
talent
both
questions
sides,
like
either
in path to
catching
immediate
or
volume for
receiving.
Odunze.
Him,
I think those
I
like
like
kind of
him,
negate and cancel each other
Christian
out. So for me,
McCaffrey. I
there's no
also go
reason
with
to rank them differently from how I ranked them
Kamara's
going
a
into the
good guy.
draft, which was
And also somebody that gets a
Odunze
lot of
2
carry.
and Neighbors at 3.
Like I said, Christian McCaffrey's pretty good. He's a guy that I would, top of my list automatically. Then we get the ball to Saquon a lot as well. And Alvin Kamara's kind of low
I
on
feel
the
like
list.
taking
It's
control
kind
of your colon
crazy
cancer
to me.
screening.
But
Cologuard is used right
Christian
at home
McCaffrey,
on
he's
your
definitely
schedule.
number
It's
one
non-invasive
draft
with
pick
no
if he's
prep
out there to
required.
pick him. But I did it my way.
Screen your way. Ask your provider for Cologuard.
Start about how
I don't care if
I don't
Sean
pick a
McVay
quarterback
drafts
till
C.
maybe
Rob
the
to be
third
his
or
running
fourth
back.
round.
I'm gonna give it I'm gonna give it fire because he's McVay.
This
And
year's
he's just not
these
wrong when it comes to
quarterbacks,
how he's going to
they
use
throw,
what
they
he's going
throw,
to
they
use.
throw. They're
It
getting a lot
works.
of
Another
touchdowns.
pick
So
has
it's not
gone
one
on.
that
Let me
you
just say the
can say,
fantasy
I
part of
need
this
him,
because
he's
of the
my
Rams.
point getter.
This sucks for fantasy.
You know,
I mean, like,
no,
the
those
people are
guys.
going to want to, like, I'm
And your
sure the
tight
chat
ends, don't
needs
get
to
me
hear
wrong.
it because
So
Kyron Williams was a guy that might have been
actually, I will try to
Yeah,
fill them up
because
first
he had
because they do take a
incredible
lot
year.
of running back.
You saw them
Somebody will
change
sneak
their
in there with
identity
the
from like
receiver
being
first
zone
pick, but
heavy
most people,
run
everybody
scheme
picks for
over
the
the
running
course
back.
of Sean
Also,
McVay's
that's always
time there. They transitioned to this like
so.
duo man
Let's go to
power
top
gap
five.
heavy run
Let's
scheme
go with
last
all
year,
the
and it was
running backs, and I'll
awesome.
tell you
Yeah.
how I
Kyron
rank
Williams
them and how I would
ran the
choose,
piss out of the
to be
ball
honest.
in that scheme. It was
He did.
incredible, and I think
No,
Blake Corum's
I
a good
wouldn't.
fit for.
I wouldn't
But
rank them.
good luck
I
picking
wouldn't
which
choose
one's
them.
gonna like be the
Kyron
more
also got
productive.
I mean, I would go with Christian McCaffrey. That's a good solid number one pick right there. Now Brees Hall, he didn't do good last year as far as that because he plays for New York. I want to say, I mean, he wasn't bad, but for me, he's not my second pick. If I was going for a number two, like I was telling you, I mean, I do like Alvin Kamara, even though he didn't play a lot. He didn't play most of the year last year because he come back from that suspension. So and Bijan can get it steady and running. I mean, he's a guy that you can look at, but he didn't get it really going, man. Even against the teams that weren't that good defensively, he still didn't get it going. I mean, he was their number one. Well, he was splitting carries, so that's probably a big reason why. So I like Jamar Gibbs as well, but we'll go down the line. Like I said, we'll go down with Brees Hall. He's not, like I said, Christian McCaffrey's a good solid one. If I had the opportunity, I'd go with him. Brees Hall, I probably wouldn't. It's they're kind of a 50-50 more. I want to say they're probably more pass heavy. I'm gonna be honest. I mean, over there in New Jersey, they're more pass heavy. With their receiver over there, he's a killer. So I mean, they're not a good running team in the red zone, so that's another reason I wouldn't go with Brees Hall. They struggle as far as running the ball inside the red zone. So, he as far as number two, I wouldn't have him. That's my personal opinion. And then we'll go. That's why I wouldn't have him that high. What I'll end up doing is I'll give you a preview of everybody here, and then I'll come back and I'll give you my actual rankings and how I would pick or choose my first. I'm gonna do the first 10, and from there. So then the next pick's gonna be Bijan. Like I was saying earlier about Bijan, he was splitting carries there last year. He really didn't get his going. I mean, he did okay. He did pretty decent. They got a little bit of injury during the middle of the season. I mean, they have probably like I said, it's a new year, so it was his rookie year, Bijan. So he's probably gonna have him coming up. And then let's move on to Jonathan Taylor. Well, Jonathan Taylor, we know he got injured last year. He came back. I mean, he was splitting carries over there as well. So I mean, a lot of these, I don't like to pick guys that split carries too much. I mean, yeah, he gets a lot of tough yards. He's got good hands, good back out of the backfield as well as catching the ball. But he's got a nice, solid receiving core. I mean, Christian McCaffrey does too, but they're more run oriented over there in San Francisco. They'll run and run till they get stopped. That's the way they run. Jonathan Taylor over here, they're kind of balanced as far because they got a nice receiving core. So I mean, I guess we just he did like I said, he came back looking good after his injury. So we'll see how about that. He's pretty good, like I say. But as far as what I look, he's not exactly what I like in a dual threat back. Then we have Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs is a guy that he's up and down. I mean, he's a dual threat, no doubt. Rookie last year, killed it. But he's one of those guys that, I mean, he's going to probably be more of a passing back than he is a running back because of, who he's behind. I mean, there's nothing he can do about that. Running behind Dave Montgomery, it's one of those things. Those guys are both good. I mean, they do a lot of split, so it's kind of hard. He's a guy that you would probably not start depending on the matchups. That's how you would start Jahmyr Gibbs. You're not going to start him every game. You would, like I said, you'd probably check on the matchup. You know what I mean? And that's how you would start Jahmyr Gibbs. If you were, like these first four running backs, they're all starters. They're all going to give you, they're all number one backs on the team. But like I say, I mean, with the exception of Christian McCaffrey, I mean, he's the only real dual threat that's going to get you a lot of points. I mean, these guys can, like these two, Bijan and Jonathan, can get you points. I mean, a lot of them will be, running in the red zone for touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs, he can get you points anyway, but like I say, it varies on the game and how the David's running. So, I mean, he's a guy that you're going to pick him early in the draft. You're always going to check out his matchups, and that's how you'll play him. So, I mean, he's not a bad pick at all. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying that's what you have to watch Jahmyr Gibbs. So let's go on next to Saquon. Well, it's going to be in Philly. Phillies can be a run-heavy offense, and he does catch a lot of passes out that backfield, and that guy can move. I mean, he just been injured, but, I mean, he came back after his injury last year, did pretty good. So, I mean, he's a good, solid back. He's another guy I probably would start, but now that we'll see how he is at Philly, though, behind that line and that team as well. Because, I mean, they like to run the ball with the quarterback too. So I mean, it's one of those, they get going with him. I mean, but because especially like in the red zone, man, they like to do that tush push even on the goal line. So maybe they'll kind of get away from that, putting in what's the name of getting a lot of them hits that fall back on Saquon because he can get you those tough yards. So I mean, that's a good look into him. He'll be scoring a lot of touchdowns as far as just on the ground, running the ball, probably in a lot of the red zone. They'll want to get away from their quarterback taking all those hits that he doesn't need to take. Now, Josh Jacobs from Green Bay. Honestly, I wouldn't have him this high on the list at all. I mean, he's more of a running back, like I say. He doesn't catch too many balls out of the backfield, but he's more of a running. He's a hard runner, Josh Jacobs. So they probably got him. He'll be the lead back. Oh well, I don't know if he'll be the lead back now. He'll be splitting carries as well. So I mean, he's one of those guys that Green Bay. They got a nice receiving core, so I wouldn't. To be honest, I wouldn't pick him as a starter. I'd pick him as a backup and use him like that, or like use him when my other guy's not playing. Depending on the week off. He's not a guy for me that I like I would like, and that would rack up a lot of fantasy points. Because that's what you have to look at. Which guys are going to rack up points and how they rack them up, and they can sustain that the whole year, because that's what I look for in a back. Like I say, that's why I look for the dual threats. Here's a good guy that's gonna Kyron Williams. I think he had the most carries last year. I know he has most carries a game. This guy will rack up yards, and he can catch the ball in the backfield as well. So Kyron Williams is a good pick. Like if you're gonna start a guy, you're looking at a guy like Kyron Williams. I would Saquon Barkley would be a guy. Even Jonathan Taylor, you could start him. Like I said, it all varies as far as how you pick these guys and what round and what's out there. I mean, but Kyron Williams, yes, that would be a great pick to have. I mean, just in general, the guy they put the ball in his hands. He's gonna carry the most. Red zone, wherever that's he's a good touchdown monster for those guys. He's gonna he's gonna give you a lot of fantasy points. They just run the ball with him constantly. So he's the guy that I would look at. As far as I would probably move him higher in my draft if I had the opportunity. But that's me. And then Derrick Henry, well, he's not the same Derrick Henry. I tell you that. I mean, we're gonna really see what kind of Derrick Henry he is next year at Baltimore. I mean, he's turned into a dual threat, so that's a good thing. So I mean, he's not a bad first option. Like I say, if he's on the draft board, I'd get him. I wouldn't put him in a top 5, to be honest. But he's a guy that Derrick Henry. What can you say? He's gonna pound it out. He's gonna go for those tough yards. They're gonna, and they're gonna put the ball in his hand. That's just what they do. Derrick Henry. I mean, like I say, he does catch the ball out of the backfield as well. So I mean, he's a dual threat. He can be exciting. He's a guy that if I did have him on the team, he's another guy that probably wouldn't start all the time. I would check my matchups just in case, because I mean, if you have a good front line, man, they get to him early. You can shut down Derrick Henry because he's a guy that he's so big, he has to get going, really get him some yardage. So I mean, that's what I would, as far as Derrick Henry goes, as far as that, that's how I would get him. If I would use him, I wouldn't use him as a start. No, I'd look at more the matchup. He's a more matchup guy, So let's go on to Pacheco. Well, he's a dual threat, but this is he's up and down. I mean, they just have too many running backs over there, so I don't know if they still are doing it by committee because they had 3 running backs. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, yeah, he picked towards the end and Super Bowl, he picked up a lot of the loads, but during the course of the year, I mean, he's the same way. They're up and down, but the whole team's up and down if you think about it. Even the tight end over there, man. I mean, he was even up and down. So he's the type of guy as well that if he would not be a starter for me, he would be more of a come off the bench, check the matchups, or my guy is not playing. He's on the rest week. That's how I use Isaiah Pacheco. But I mean, I don't know how they're going to do it this year. But I mean, he's been in a 3-headed monster over there. So I mean, it's one of those opportunities. It's not it wouldn't be a first pick for me. I'd want to get my 2 running backs and maybe get him as a third. Let's get to Rachaad White. Man, that guy came out of nowhere last year. He's a pretty good, solid back, man. I mean, he did pretty good on. He got a lot of carries, got a lot of first. They used him a lot on third down, third and short. I did notice that last year. So he's a guy that he can rack you up some points. I mean, he's a guy that I could probably use as my starter because of the way they use him over there at Tampa Bay. I mean, they started running the ball a lot more towards the end of the season, right before the playoffs. And he started racking up a lot of points. I didn't notice that. So he's a guy that I would, like I say, I would start him, I mean, I probably would start him. I mean, like I say, he did pretty good. I mean, but it's like I say, he's a matchup guy as well. So I mean, you got to look at that. And then Travis Etienne Jr. He's an up and down running back, depending on how the team's actually playing. That's the thing with him. If the team's going, he's going. He's another guy that I wouldn't necessarily start. I would look at the matchups because they're just. And the team over there, maybe it's because of the line. Maybe I know during the draft they did get somebody, so they're kind of like up and down as far as that. So that's where I would use it. Etienne Jr. I would, if I did pick him up, he wouldn't be a starter starter for me. He'd be more matchup guy. My third pick running back, a guy like that. I mean, you just got to watch the matchups with that guy. And Devon Arcane, well, I think he's going to be the lead guy now. He started to at the moment. I know he suffered that injury, so we're going to see how that goes. I mean, he wouldn't be my first, just because of the injuries he had. I mean, he's good. He's got a burst. So I would tread lightly with choosing him like first or second pick as far as a starter, just because of his injury, and see how he can hold up the whole year. He's one of those guys that, let me see what it actually says. I'm going to show this thing. So, as done as I. Looks like he's doing okay. But yeah, I would tread lightly with Arcade, like I said. So then the next pick is Joe Mixon. He'll be at Houston. Ooh, well, he'll be splitting carries over there. I think they still got I can't remember the guy's name. But Joe Mixon is a solid, he's pretty solid. He's a guy that I could start, like I give you, if I had some good receivers, some good number one receivers starting, and I needed to fill them up with a running back, like I say, Joe Mixon is a guy that I would fill it up with. Depending on how you go on fantasy, Joe Mixon is the guy that he'll complement one receiver if you have a good receiver in there, and he has him as a backfield. He's a good complement as far as fantasy. That's the best way to describe Joe Mixon. If you have some good and you don't have a number top 5 running back, Joe Mixon is the guy that you would throw in there. It would help your fantasy, to be honest. He's one of those guys that he's a dual threat. He's a little bit older now. He runs hard. He runs for the first down, but he blocks. He's a good running back. I've used him. That's why I say that. He's a good one of those running backs. Like, if you haven't got the top 5, I would use him as a 6th pick, to be honest. He's a guy that if you went receiver first, tight end first, I would get Joe Mixon. He could add some value to your fantasy. So, I mean, that's my take on Joe Mixon. Now, let's get to James Cook. Well, James Cook's a guy because they're really pass heavy over there at Buffalo. Or they're run heavy with the quarterback. He's an okay guy. Like I said, he wouldn't be a starter for me. He'd be a guy that came off the bench. He'd be a third string. He'd be a guy, like I say, that I use but my guy's down for the week or he has a bye week. He's not a bad, but he just doesn't get a lot of fantasy points for me. He doesn't get a lot of fantasy points. So, I mean, that's where I leave James Cook at. He's just not a guy that I would, start. He's not a starter for me. He's just not a fantasy point getter. He has too many weapons on that team, and they take a lot of those points. Just they're not a run heavy team anyways, So that's why I would shy away. I'll be honest. I mean, he's just another guy that what's left of the mix. Yeah, I'd get him, just put him in there on, have him as a backup. But other than that, I mean, I wouldn't use him never as a starter. He doesn't have fantasy point value upside for me. So let's get with Kenneth Walker the third. So this guy, I mean, I guess you could say he had a breakout last year. I mean, even with the struggling offense they did have. I mean, I don't know how they have him a lot higher than Kamara, even Montgomery. I mean, I don't know who made this list. I don't personally like it as far as how I view fantasy. This is a fantasy list for me. This isn't because I don't. He wasn't a good fantasy point getter too much. Maybe it was because he just barely. It was for me. It was his breakout year. I guess you could say. I didn't really know who he was. So he's definitely wouldn't be a starter for me. He's somebody, like I said, fill up the deal. If you need extra backs, 4th, 5th back, to be honest, to pick if you had the opportunity. I mean, I would still pick him. He's just not a big fantasy guy for me at all. So, I mean, I would try to get away from him leave him in a fourth or fifth round type running back situation. Now let's get to Dave Montgomery now. He could be definitely number one. He'll get you some he'll get you some fantasy points, whether it's touchdowns, first downs, or just touch the ball. And he'll catch a lot of it. He's run hard, but like I say, he splits the carries over there. But I would take the opportunity. I mean, maybe now that Jamar's the potential, they may split like heavily 50-50, where it does take away some of Montgomery's points, fantasy points now, because I mean, how can you decide? I mean, I'm not gonna say they're gonna take away, but I think just because of his explosion of Jamar Gibbs, it's gonna hurt his fantasy David Montgomery as far as what should be. So I would he's definitely he's more like a Joe Mixon, I guess. He's a guy too that if you have heavily already receivers and quarterback, he's a guy that you could use as starting running back like that in that scenario, where he's gonna, like I say, complement to what everybody else, get you some good, probably a good 12 to 14 point guy, which you need in fantasy sometimes. And Garrett, he's guaranteed. So next we'll go to Aaron Jones, Minnesota. Well, starting all over, he left Green Bay, so we're going to see how that goes. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Minnesota's they're just a weird running back team because they have good receivers over there, so they're like that. I mean, we'll see. Aaron Jones, you got to wait till the season starts. I mean, for me, he's not a good starting back. Like I said, I'd fill up my roster with him, definitely. He'll help you. He's a matchup guy, too, if you're going to fill up your roster. Or even if you want to start him a game. That's the type of running back Aaron Jones is. So let's go to my guy right here. I don't know why he's 19th on the list, man. I would have. That's crazy. Maybe it's the age. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe it's the age. No, I would definitely have him. He's a top 10. I mean, about the opportunity. I mean, probably not top 5, probably a top 10, just because of age and just what they're doing over there now. But, like I say, he only played, he missed a couple of games. But he's a guy that I would start. I ain't going to lie to you. I could start him every weekend, depending the matchup, because there's sometimes, but everybody's not, as a player, as you've been playing fantasy for a while, your guys always not, there's going to be that one down game, 2 down games they do have where they don't do anything. But the guy, he's a dual threat, man. I like him. Last year, he helped me out. I won one of my 5 sticks because of him last year. So he's a definitely starter for me. So, that's how I look at Alvin Kamara. Now, Ramon Stevenson. Well, now that Zeke's gone, he's going to be the main guy over there. So he didn't do too bad. He's a guy that, he's up and down. He depends all on the team, man, to be honest. So, I don't know. I don't know how you would use him. So let's get on to the next guy. I'm only going to do top 25 today. So, Rasheem Mostert. Well, that's the guy that's going to be sharing carries over there. He didn't do too bad. He's a little bit older now. For me, he's not a 1-2 back. He's a guy that you're going to fill your roster with and check matchups, of course, and, come off the bench type guy for somebody you're missing. So then we have Zamir White. Oh, I guess he's a rookie. Let me bring him. I already know much about him. He didn't pay too much attention to this guy. I'm just going crazy. Well, they got him pretty good. I think it was Jacobs. Or not Jacobs. I can't remember the guy's name. But, he's the type of guy that he might be able to come in. He's kind of young guy, so he could be part of the workhorse. But I try to stay away from guys that I don't really pay attention to much. He didn't really do much for me in fantasy last year, as far as what I look. I didn't choose him, but just point-wise. For me, it's got to be about the points, So let's move on to James Conner. Well, this guy, he never would have got injured, man. He'd be one of these, a good dual threat. His part of him is just he's injury prone. So if you're going to go with him, you're going to definitely get his backup because I mean the guy's injury prone. That's just the way he's been. After his second year, injury, he can't stay healthy. I mean, he's a good guy. He's a good flash. Like I say, not a 1-2 starter for me. Somebody coming off the bench. That's where I would look at him. So let's go Najee. Well, they have a two-headed monster over there as well. So Najee, I could. He's just not for me. He's not a starter as well. He gets a. I mean, Pittsburgh's a grinding team. They did grind a lot, but they're just a team that's. I want to say they're in the rebuilding phase because they don't have their quarterback's not locked down like it. They're not where they're at with the quarterback. So I definitely wouldn't use him as a starter. So he's a guy too that I would have in the backfield. He's more of a replacement player, injury type guy, somebody coming off the deal, fifth round back, or if I was in the backfield, I wouldn't waste a 1-3 pick unless I had to on him. Now let's go with Jaylen Warren. He's a accomplice in crime. He's a good back. He's young. He's very explosive. He can catch out of the backfield. I'll be honest. I would start Jaylen Warren. I think Jaylen Warren's going to, because this is power and this is basically how they play. I would start Jaylen Warren if he can. I think he can break out the shell this year. I would definitely start him in front of Najee just for the fact of what I can see is coming on. But that's just me. So, but he's a guy that I could third back. And if I was fantasy, because you're allowed to start to pick a third, he was Jaylen Warren, that type of guy. So that's where I would go with him. Yeah, so I mean, he's a definite pick that I could look at. Maybe as the season progresses and he starts really getting some fantasy value up there, he could be a starter. Who knows? Well, guys, that's going to be the first 25 round for the day. Plus, I got to go and I got to pick up my son. I didn't know it was just already 2:30. So, well, guys, I'm going to come back with another half of this. I'm going to do all. I can do all 100. That's what I'll do. I'll come back and do the rest. So that's what I'm going to be looking at as far as the NFL draft. Try to give everybody, good value with that because I watch fantasy. I play fantasy. I can give you my insights on what I look for as players and how I would pick players. So with that, guys, if you're new to my channel, please like, share, and subscribe. If you don't have Prize Picks, you can use Prize Picks is bringing you today's fantasy football ad. But I do have promo codes for my other apps as well called Sleeper and the Hook'em, all capital letters. And then I use Chalkboard as well. And it's Hook'em as well, but the only capital on that is the H and the E. Well, guys, I'm going to get out. I got to pick up my son. So peace, Hook'em horns, and let's win, guys.